China's largest ever military parade is underway right now. The September 3rd Victory Day event marks 80 years since Japan's defeat at the end of World War II. Now, it aims to project China's military force to the entire world. Let's bring in Miles Yu, the director of the China Center at the Hudson Institute and the professor of East Asia and military history at the Naval Academy. Miles, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Let's first talk about the real purpose of this parade. We're saying it's to kind of evoke China's military might, but it goes a little deeper than that.
Yeah. Everything that China does is really try to project certain image. This is not really new because the Chinese Communist Party has always, for decades, liked this kind of pageantry and extravaganza to project the image of infallibility and invincibility, and also the idea somehow the China commands the world's respect. They have not really done so until this moment in such a scale because the timing is different. Russia is deeply involved in the Ukraine and couldn't get out. And Kim Jong-un, from the most prominent rocket man a few years ago, now to almost the man of irrelevance. And then he needs attention. And the Indian Prime Minister Modi, obviously he's not there for the parade, but he was there for the SCO just a few days ago. He is passive aggressively unhappy with the United States because of tariff. So people have all kinds of motive to go to China and to create this illusion that somehow China is the leader of the alternative universe, the world order. I don't think that's the case because there's always this enormous clash of ambitions among all the leaders. There's no way for anybody to believe that Vladimir Putin, a man of enormous ambition, would really submit to the Chinese global leadership. China, of course, Xi Jinping believes that he is the place on top of the world because he has money. So everybody wants his money. So that's basically what it's about. Now, you mentioned about the purpose. One of the really odd things about this parade is the Chinese Communist Party always has a parade of gigantic proportions. But this one on the victory over Japan has only been held by Xi Jinping himself. Nobody has done it because he did it in 2015. Now this is another time because, as we all know, the Chinese Communist Party played virtually no decisive role in the defeat of Japan during World War II. It was the Chinese nationalist government. So I would say, this military parade is both an act of audacity and mendacity in creating the false narrative.
I want to lean in a little bit to the guest list because the video that we're showing is President Xi shaking hands with all these world leaders. We have Russian President Vladimir Putin, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. Between these three, Xi Jinping included, they're known to some as the axis of upheaval. But as you mentioned, they all have very different agendas. So is this guest list, are these photo ops really about kind of trolling the U.S., for lack of a better word?
Actually, trolling is a very good word. And I say this is probably the most popular, most disputed image out of all this is Xi Jinping, Prime Minister Modi, and Putin together chatting in a very amicable way. Now, there's no interpreters. Xi Jinping doesn't understand a word of any foreign languages. Now, Prime Minister Putin doesn't understand a word of Chinese, nor does Prime Minister Modi. So this is the whole thing is what they discuss. They cannot really communicate. So it's for optics. But I think, there is a potential for China and Russia to get closer together because they share the same kind of anti-West ideology for different reasons. China, of course, is a communist country. West poses an existential threat to the regime's survivability. Russia, of course, is anti-West because Russia wants to become the dominant nation in probably mostly in Europe and certainly in the Slavic world. So I think there is a commonality shared by all those coalition of bad guys, but also you have enormous differences in terms of their interest, and they all come together in Beijing. It's a show. If I were President Trump, I would just grab Melania and a bowl of popcorn and watch it with some kind of amusement.
Right. I want to lean into a little bit to Vladimir Putin because you mentioned Russia's greater interest because the dominant force in all of Europe. They're currently fighting a war with Ukraine. China watching very closely to find out the outcome of that because of their interest in Taiwan. I'm curious if you think this optics, this parade of leaders, this photo op is going to have an impact on a potential peace agreement or a ceasefire between Russia and Ukraine, given the interest of China in that conflict?
Oh, China has said openly, China has never condemned Russia as an aggressor. China's foreign minister has said openly to EU senior officials that China cannot afford a Russia defeat in Ukraine, because that's why the war in Ukraine is as much as Russia's war as China's war, because China is the ultimate enabler. Most critical fighting tools, including many of the dual-use trucks and drones, are from China. China, of course, is bankrolling Russia's war machine. So what I'm saying here, you cannot really end the war in Ukraine without first sort of cutting off the tie between China and Russia. So this is very important. So that's in a sense that Russia wants China's money and wants China's support. But Russia also wants China's money to develop its Far East. That's basically is considered as the primary security vulnerability for Vladimir Putin. China has signed several treaties, agreements with Russia, promising hundreds of billions of dollars to develop some kind of pipeline in Siberia. China has never fulfilled that promise. This is one of the reasons why Vladimir Putin right now, his China trip is again, for the third time in about 15 years, forcing China to sign another agreement, asking China to fulfill its promise, putting money in developing the pipeline in Siberia. So what I'm saying here is, yes, there's a shared common animosity toward the West, and also even logic of aggression. The idea that somehow Russia and Ukraine share historical, ethnic, and linguistic ties. Therefore, Ukraine should be part of Russia. China used the exact logic of aggression for Taiwan, because China said, Taiwan, you don't speak Chinese, you share history with us, and therefore Taiwan should be part of China. That is the same logic of aggression. In this sense, Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping, they have much in common. Other than that, they have a lot of conflict and a clash of ambitions.
Yeah, it's interesting. As you've been speaking, Miles, they have this very iconic photo of you see all these world leaders lining up and parading down a red carpet. It's a very interesting photo op. But thank you so much for your insight, Miles Yu.
Thank you.